What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another Grimlock video. I hope you enjoy this one. This is my updated PvP tier list for the patch 10.1.5. Now, this tier list is going to be mainly revolving around 3v3 arena, so if you're looking for a battleground tier list, I would suggest looking at my other tier list from about like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's pretty accurate still, but yeah, this one's for 3v3 arena, so if you're looking at 3v3 arena, or if you're looking for solo shuffle even, I guess, technically, I would watch this video. Also, if you enjoy this video, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment down below letting me know that you like this video, and also, if you really want to join the Grimlock crew, feel free to join the Discord in the description below, and also follow me on Twitch because I am streaming every Tuesday and Thursday and either Sunday or Saturday. I haven't really dialed it in yet, but I think one of those days is going to be the main day that I stream almost every week. So yeah, catch me on Tuesday or Thursday around 8 p.m. Eastern, and yeah, I'll see you guys there, and I hope you enjoy this video again. Peace. Alright, starting off our tier list, we have Affliction Warlock. Affliction Warlocks just got buffed, which is pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie, I've played some Shadow Priest Affliction Warlock, which is known as Shadow Play. Really enjoy that composition right now. I think the cleave is pretty disgusting, especially once you get your damage rolling pretty good. I would say Affliction's probably a solid A right now. I wouldn't put it A+. I think A is a good base for it. Arcane Mage is a spec I would say is A+ right now. It can play with a lot of things. It does a good amount of damage. It has a lot of utility. It has a lot of mobility, so it's hard to kill. Pretty solid specialization. We got Arms Warrior. Arms Warrior is pretty solid. I would say it's a it's probably a little lower than Arcane Mage. Arms Warrior has high burst. It can do about 150k mortal strikes. The problem is its execute hits for 0. It doesn't have a ridiculous amount of utility, but it does have intervene, which is really strong right now. It has spell reflect, which is also really good. It has a lot of mobility, which is pretty good, but not enough mobility, I feel like, to keep up with Arcane Mage. But nothing really has enough mobility to keep up with Arcane Mage, so I'd say it's in a pretty good spot. But I do think I wouldn't be surprised if Arms Warrior got nerfed on some things and buffed on other things. I guess I'll put it that way. We have Assassination Rogue. Assassination Rogue is actually pretty good. It does pretty solid, consistent damage. The problem is it doesn't like live as long, and it doesn't provide as much utility, in my opinion, as Outlaw or Sub Rogue. So I feel like Assassination's probably like B tier. Sorry, I just got over. Well, I'm still getting over being sick. So if you hear me sniffling this video, I apologize for that. Boomkins are in a good spot. Honestly, I'm surprised I don't see more Affliction Warlock Boomkin. I don't see this a lot. I think it would be really good in 3v3s. So yeah, I'm surprised I don't see that more often, especially because Holy Pally is pretty good. I feel like Affliction Boomy Holy Pally could actually be pretty solid, especially with like things like Repentance and Denounce being so good. Like all that stuff is really solid. But yeah, so sorry, Boomkin, I would probably place it a little, I think a little above Aflock, probably like that. More classes will come, but I don't think it's A+ tier. It definitely does good damage, but I don't see enough of them now, so it's kind of hard to say. Beast Mastery Hunter, solid spec. I'm just gonna rename D as tanks because this is an arena tier list. So yeah, I'm gonna say BM is pretty solid. I would put it, I think, under Boomy but above Affliction right now. Its single target is really high. It has pretty good utility with Roar Sacrifice, and Aspect of the Turtle is a great defensive. Also, a lot of casters right now are really good, so you can feign death off a lot of magic dots. You can also Mending Bandage. Sorry, that's survival only. But you can Mending Bandage if you're a survival hunter, which is pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, it has a lot of utility. BM Hunter is pretty solid. I don't think it's too bad at all right now. I do think the better mages and warlocks get, the better BM Hunter gets, and any hunter spec really, any physical damage spec really kind of gets a buff, because when more people are playing cloth classes, bosses. Physical damage obviously does more damage to them, so it kind of helps them. Obviously Blood DK I'm going to put in the tank. I don't think any of the tanks, actually I'm just going to put all the tanks here now. Let's go through here. Guardian. I hate Guardians. Absolute sinners. I feel like there's one more missing. I feel like I keep there you go. Yeah, I feel like tanks are just not good for arenas at all. I do know when you get a prop paladin in solo shuffle, it replaces your healer, which is really scary. But prop pallies are actually pretty good. I did play with the rank 1 prop paladin in North America right now in solo shuffle, and it actually felt pretty fun. It's just really chaotic. It's just a really back and forth, but prop pallies have pretty interesting heals. But other than that, I think the other tank specs are really scummy. I hear that Blood Death Knights have like 1,000,000 death grips. I mean, I don't know. Brewmaster has some form of one-shot ability, like it can do like 300k damage with a Rising Sun kick if you get really lucky with procs. But outside of that, I think in arenas these classes are kind of garbage. Moving on to Demo Warlock though, Demonology is good with the right composition, but I actually think it's a little better than Affliction, but I don't think it, maybe not, I don't know. It's hard. I think Affliction with its own specific comp, like say Unholy Death Knight Affliction, which is Shadow Cleave, is probably better than Demonology Unholy Death Knight. But Demonology like Mage might be really good because Demonology has a lot of utility that plays into Mage's weak benefits, and also it has a Mortal Strike effect, which is great for Mage to play with something that has a Mortal Strike effect, which is why they play with a lot of like Warrior or Rogue and stuff like that. So yeah, so I think Demonology plays well with Mage. Affliction plays well with like other things. Destro Warlock is actually pretty good. I played a couple of games against the Destro Warlocks today, and if you're not training them, they will actually destroy you, and I found that out the hard way. So not really the hard way, I've known that for a while, but I would put Destro above the other two specs, and I would probably place it actually a little above BM Hunter in my opinion. I feel like it's more consistent than BM Hunter. It has a spammable CC just like the other Warlock specs, but it also has the kill potential that BM Hunter kind of lacks. BM Hunter does have kill potential, but it relies on like doing consistent damage, whereas Destro Warlock kind of has this like hidden random 300k that it can just do if you let it free cast enough. So yeah, I would put Destro a little above BM. We have Devastation Evoker. Devastation Evoker is pretty solid, but it's not. It's solid, but it's not anywhere close to Augmentation, which infinitely makes it kind of like, I would say B tier. The reason why I'm putting it B tier is because if you're a really practiced Devastation Evoker, so say you're Chun or like Trill, crazy strong, crazy good Evoker players can make it work in really cool comps like Arcane Mage, Devoker, or you know, stuff like that. I've even seen Sub-Rogue Devoker. I think that's kind of cool. Pretty fun composition. And obviously there's Frost Death Knight Devoker, which is like the most played Devoker comp. But I'm using Devoker, by the way, because that's just an abbreviation I use for Devastation Evoker. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Devoker. But I'm sure a bunch of people do. But yeah, so Devoker, pretty good. But it's nowhere as good as any of the classes above it. I think it just kind of gets dumpstered on. It has really low survivability compared to Augmentation. Doesn't provide as much utility to your team as Augmentation. And honestly, its burst is pretty similar to Augmentation. So it's kind of like, why would you play Devastation over Augmentation if you could? It's a little silly. Disc Priest is probably the worst healer in the game right now. Actually, it's not probably the worst healer. It is the worst healer in the game, in my opinion, by far. I would put Disc Priest in C tier. Sadly, I love Disc Priest. I think Disc Priest is a wonderful spec. When it's really good, it's really good. And when it's really bad, it is very bad. It relies too heavily on pain suppression, and when you force pain suppression on a single target, you can just swap and force the other pain suppression, and then the priest has no cooldowns whatsoever, and the next go you just kill somebody. Even if they have barrier, it doesn't matter. Even if they have like swap, it doesn't matter, because they don't have enough like actual raw healing to matter outside of its cooldowns. So yeah, Discipline Priest I feel like is in a little bit of a rough situation. So Blizzard, if you ever watch this, if any developer watches this, maybe support your Discipline Priest with a little bit of Buffy. That'd be pretty sick. We got Elemental Shaman. These just got buffed pretty okay. They got buffed in a weird way though. They got buffed like I think like their lava burst, like a really hard cast lava burst build. There's like a one-shot build that's going on right now. It's a little crazy. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I think it could do pretty good with a couple of classes. Like I think Arms Warrior getting buffed makes Ellie Arms Warrior really good. Thundercleave pretty solid. I would say that Ellie Augmentation could work really well. Ellie Aflock could work really well. That got buffed as well. So LSD, I think LSD could be really good right now, actually. Any form of LSD, so any Destro, Demo, or Aflock could work really well with Elemental. The way Elemental does damage, it just does a lot of spread pressure. So I'm going to put Ellie actually above Destro. I don't think it's better than Boomkin, though it could be. I think it depends on the player. And I think in North America specifically, I know this sounds really stupid, but I think in North America specifically, our Elemental Shamans are worse than our Boomkin players, and our Boomkin players are just better than our Elemental Shaman players, so Boomkin is passively better in North America. But if you swap this to EU, like the only, well, not the only, but one of the, like, crazy Boomkin players is just Waz. and then you have, like, Zeepai on Elemental Shaman, just absolutely insane. There's a lot of Elemental Shamans on EU. I wouldn't say there's as many Boomkins. It's hard to say. But yeah, I think they're actually pretty tied. These two classes are really good right now in the right composition. So interesting. I would love to see like an LSD game versus an LSD game. Like, I know that sounds dumb, but like an Elemental Aflock Resto Druid game versus like a Boomkin Aflock Resto Shaman game. I think that would be such a cool game to watch, because it would just be like two rock comps, just and then like there's like these two slugger type classes like Elemental Shaman. Anyways, okay, I'm getting off track, but yes, very good class. I think Enhancement Shaman is really good. It just got a burst nerf, but its consistent damage went up, and I've been playing it with my Windwalker, and I think Enhance is pretty solid still if you play with the right DPS. Like Windwalker, you don't really need you don't really need a class that does like high burst. I mean, it helps a lot with Windwalker, but Windwalker alone has enough potential to just like 100-0 somebody, which is pretty disgusting. And the utility that Enhance gets is really solid as well. Also, it does just have a random raw burst potential, but when it bursts, it's just not as heavy. But now it's consistent, it's good, so that's kind of nice. So I'm actually going to place Enhance above Boomkin, LE, Destro, all that. I think it's pretty solid. It's also pretty solid as Turbo Cleave, ironically, right next to the Arms Warrior there. I think Arms Warrior or even Fury Warrior Enhance could work pretty well, but I think Arms Warrior Enhance Turbo Cleave is pretty solid right now. Unironically, might be Discipline Priest, one of Discipline Priest's best compositions, outside of like maybe RMP, but RMP you might as well be playing with a Holy Priest anyways. Same thing with everything. But anyways, yeah, Enhance is pretty good. I would say it's pretty solid right now. We got Feral Druids. Feral Druids are pretty okay. I don't think they're fantastic. They have a decent amount of single target damage, but not anywhere close to the likes of like a Demon Hunter or a Windwalker Monk or even like a Sub-Rogue. Like, I honestly think they're probably, they rot more than those classes though, so they could play really well with like an Affliction Lock. They could play well with like a Shadow Priest. Maybe even an Unholy Death Knight, like an Ebola Cleave thing going on, you know what I'm saying? I think that would be pretty spicy for Feral, but outside of that, I feel like you're probably low A tier. Maybe a little above Assassination in B tier, but I would say low A tier. The survivability of Feral is kind of nice, and having Clone on a DPS is always really good. Like, just being able to clone things is great. Also, they have an instant cast root, which is really good right now, because like Arms Warrior just got buffed, and Windwalker is really good, so you can spam root them. That's also pretty good. Fire Mage is great. I think it does pretty significant amount of damage. I don't think it's as good as the other specs, in my opinion. It might be a little bit better than Frost with the right composition, but it's definitely not as good as Arcane, in my opinion. I think Arcane is really good. Yeah, I think Arcane is really good. Yeah, I think this is where I'm going to put them, like that, because I think Arcane is just better in most situations, at least. We do have Frost DK. I think Frost Death Knight is trash. Sadly, Blizzard just keeps ignoring this spec because it does well in PvE, but in PvP it's absolute dumpster fire. It's such a predictable burst, and the only composition that really works with it well is Devastation Evoker and augmentation of Ochre. I did play in the first season of Dragonflight. I played Frost DK Ret Paladin when Ret's really good, and Vanguard's Cleave felt pretty good, but I was like capped at like 2k because there's just no. It's just a Frost DK, you know. Unholy DK is pretty much better in every situation right now, sadly. But I would say Frost DK is probably the worst spec outside of tanks right now. Pretty consistent with that. So yeah, I would say that's the case. Fury Warrior. Just also going about Frost DK. Frost DK can work with like TSG and stuff, but there's almost like zero reason to play it over Unholy, so that's the only reason I say that. Frost is okay. It does pretty high single target damage, and it can be pretty surprising to new players, but if you know what a Frost DK is doing or how they're lining up their damage or what they're looking for to line up their damage, it's pretty predictable, pretty easy to avoid. You basically just, as a healer, you want to line of sight the Frost Death Knight as much as possible, only peek when you have something to avoid getting Death Gripped in. If you get Death Gripped in, immediately use something like Fade or Tranquility or stuff like that. That way you can avoid getting blinded into a full stun. Basically anything to avoid crowd control versus Death Knight, that's how you want to avoid dealing with Frost Death Knights. And if you can do that consistently every single minute, which you should be able to once you get it down, you'll basically avoid Frost DK's entire burst damage. It's so predictable. Fury Warrior is pretty good. It's not great. I would say it's probably better than Feral. I think it's probably better than Feral, but it's worse than everything else above it. Yeah, I think it's just good. It has a good Mortal Strike effect, crazy strong Mortal Strike effect. It does pretty good cleave damage. It has higher execute damage than Arms Warrior, but less consistent damage than Arms Warrior, I think. Yeah, I think Fury's okay. It's not great. It's not amazing. I think Arms is actually a little lower here, honestly. It might be something like this. Maybe like this even. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it like that. It's not that great. Arms Warrior is good, but it's not like amazing. Notice how there's no S tier yet. We haven't gotten there, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, Fury Warrior is not bad. Havoc Demon Hunter is pretty crazy. It just got a significant buff / nerf. The damage to I-Beam was nerfed because now I-Beam is unkickable, but it is still stunnable, paralyzable, it's CCable, so you can still counter it if you time it right with your crowd control. Kind of like Ray of Frost, you want to really respect the damage from Ray of Frost, so like as a Windwalker monk, when I'm playing against them, I like to paralyze them. Even if I plan on breaking the paralyze immediately, there's no chance I miss a kick versus a Frost DK, or Frost mage by accident and give them precog or anything like that, so I just paralyze them. And same thing with like Demon Hunter. I paralyze the I-Beam most of the time. It pretty much lines up with I-Beam's cooldown too, because I-Beam, you like reduce the cooldown of I-Beam as you're playing Demon Hunter, and it comes down to like being like a 30-second cooldown or something like that. So either way, it's like a 45-second cooldown normally, and paralyze is a 30-second cooldown. So you can pretty much paralyze every single I-Beam, which greatly reduces their damage, and then almost every single I-Beam you can also disarm. So you just like, you paralyze them, and then they get out of the paralysis, and they have Metamorphosis for like 6 seconds, and then you disarm them, and it kind of like negates the damage. But either way, sorry, that's Windwalker specific. Havoc Demon Hunter is pretty good though. It does a pretty significant amount of damage to classes that can't interrupt like that, and also it's really good versus Clothies. And just wizards in general. Any type of caster, it's pretty solid into. Actually, I think it's going to be like up here. I think it's up there. It's probably better than Arms Warrior. It does die. It can die in a stun really easily, but you can preemptively Darkness, which is really good. You can also preemptively Netherwalk, which is really good. You can preemptively Blur, but they can kind of hit through Blur if they're good enough. If you can get behind your target and stuff. But Blur also reduces the amount of damage you take. Demon Hunters also take 10% less damage to magical attacks all the time because they have tattoos, apparently. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. So yeah, Demon Hunter's not bad. I think it's pretty good. It has a lot of leech, so it heals itself for a bunch if it's actually able to do a lot of damage. So that's another benefit of Demon Hunter. Yeah, I think Demon Hunter's pretty solid. It might even be better than Enhanced now. I'm not sure. I haven't played a lot of Demon Hunters, honestly. Holy Priest, a really good healer. I would say Holy Priest is probably S tier. It is probably the second best, if not the best healer. right next to Holy Paladin, ironically. Holy Priest just has a lot of utility. It has the ability to fade crowd control. It has the ability to Shadow Word Death, polys, and paralysis, and blind, and etc. Like repentance, all that kind of stuff. It has Angel Form, which Angel Form is basically free mana. You just get to spam cast. You can free dispel, which is really good versus things like Aflock. It's really good versus Boomkins, Elemental Shaman. It's good versus a lot of things. Holy Priest is really good. The only problem I notice with Holy Priest, at least from my perspective, is if you're not running full mastery, you'll run out of mana really quickly because you can't rely on like your mastery heal. So you have to make sure you go a full mastery build, because if you're full mastery, you'll be able to like power word Serenity, and then just let the mastery tick over time, and it'll heal people for a bunch. But if you don't have mastery and you're like me and you have a bunch of haste because you're a Shadow Priest, you'll run out of mana super quick. You'll be able to cast really fast, and that's great. But yeah, you'll run out of mana super fast. So yeah, that's the only problem with Holy Priest, is I think it ooms really fast. Just remember to spam Shadow Fiend. Holy Pally, also same issue. The only thing it runs into is the fact that it runs out of mana pretty quickly. The other thing that is kind of sick about Holy Pally is it has a ridiculous amount of cooldowns. Every single minute you can hand a sacrifice somebody, so you can give them a shield wall basically, which is really gross. And that shield wall breaks crowd control on you, so if you get hit with like a poly, a paralysis, fears, anything like that can break just from you sacrificing the main kill target, which is pretty disgusting. You have Blessing and Protection, 2 of them. You have Blessing of Freedom. You have Bubble, which is pretty solid. You also have a pretty ridiculous amount of healing with Tears Deliverance. There's a lot of things you have. You have a lot of buttons to press. You have Daybreak, so you can gain your mana back really decently, but you still run out of mana if you play for a really long game. So if you're not good at Holy Pally, you're going to notice you run out of mana quick, but if you start to practice managing your mana a little bit better, you'll do fine as Holy Pally. Holy Pally is still pretty solid. I would say it's still the best healer in the game. It just has so much utility and so much stuff to deal with that it becomes really annoying. I will say that versus casters, Holy Pally does struggle because it doesn't have as many defensives versus casters, and especially Mage, who could steal your Blessing and Protection. You definitely don't want to Blessing and Protection willy-nilly and end up with the Mage being immune because he spell stole your Blessing and Protection, and now your teammate that you needed to be alive is getting blasted and they can't stop them because now they have a Blessing and Protection. So I think versus like certain comps like Augvoker, Arcane Mage, Holy Paladin struggles. But yeah, so I think that's pretty fair. I think that's a fair assessment for both of those healers. We have Marksmanship. Marksmanship is actually doing pretty good right now. It does a lot of damage. It struggles with getting trained, I feel like. It struggles because it has a lot of crowd control and faults like that. Like you can get disarmed and your whole burst is gone. You can get paralysis. Like you can really get screwed over if you get stuck in crowd control a lot. And you like rely on casting stuff for your burst. So it's kind of similar to Destrolock in that sense. I think I'm going to pair it right next to BM Hunter though. It's pretty good. I think it's a little worse than BM Hunter though, because I think BM Hunter is more consistent and relies less on having to be in line of sight and having to be able to like actually get a cast off like sniper shot or aim shot. Obviously rapid fire is disgusting no matter what, but it is a lot more counterable. You know, you go to aim shot somebody and they feign death it, you know, it stops the cast, whereas like a BM Hunter could just spam kill command over and over again and does the same damage, which is pretty ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's where they belong. Mistweavers are actually okay. I wouldn't say they're amazing. I would say they're probably the second or third worst healer in the game, but there's not that many healers, so I mean, there's that. I think they're better than Devoker. They're definitely better than Devoker, but I think they're worse. I'm gonna put Devoker in C tier. Like, can I flip these? Yes, there we go. Yeah, I think this is yeah. And then Mistweaver. right under Assassination Rogue. I think that's fair. It does die pretty easily, and it's just nowhere near as good as some of the other healers in the game right now. It doesn't do a ridiculous amount of damage even if you're fist weaving, though fist weaving can keep your team alive for quite a while without wasting a lot of mana, which is kind of nice. So that's not too bad at all. We got Outlaw Rogue. Outlaw Rogue stonks have gone up a lot ever since AWC and Calvish's Rogue Guide. Calvish is a freaking monster as Outlaw Rogue, and I just want to say, if Calvish or anybody that knows Calvish watches this video, like, that dude's insane. He's actually crazy. He is significantly better than most rogues at Outlaw Rogue. It's crazy how much damage he does. Also Trill's really good too, but yeah, Outlaw is actually not bad. It has a lot of utility. It doesn't seem to die that easily. It has a lot of cooldown reduction. Just a lot of crowd control in general. So I'm gonna say it's about here. It's a little. It's better than a lot of the specs in A, if not all the specs in A. Definitely the worst of the A+ tier, in my opinion. With the right composition, though, it could be pretty disgusting. Like Outlaw Rogue Boomkin is pretty crazy. Yeah. So I would say. I'd say that's where it belongs. It's pretty solid there, though. Preservation Evoker is actually pretty good. I think Preservation Evoker belongs probably like in this range, like A+ tier. It's pretty solid. It does a lot of damage, like a lot of damage. So if you like doing damage and you want to try out a healer, I definitely suggest trying out Preservation Evoker. It's pretty solid. I do think it has a lot of utility. It has Emerald Communion, which is pretty good. You can use it while in crowd control. It's kind of like your bubble ability, but it AoE heals everybody, which is pretty sick. Yeah, I think it's pretty solid. You have Nullifying Shroud, which is really annoying to deal with if you don't have a purge on your team. Yeah, I think Preservation's pretty crazy, pretty good. Definitely a contender for an S tier even. Resto Shaman is better than Mistweaver in my opinion, but probably. Ah, man, it's so hard. I would say probably about here on the list. Resto Shaman's good. It has a lot of utility and it's really good in the casters, but it almost doesn't do enough healing to deal with casters, especially if people are killing your totems. If people are killing Healing Stream and Healing Tide Totem, your healing is significantly reduced. If you're playing against Arcane Mage and they just Arcane Barrage your totems over and over again, you're going to lose the game most likely. It's really hard to deal with somebody that's killing your totems as a Restoration Shaman. So note, guys, if you're playing against a Restoration Shaman and you notice yourself struggling, just start hitting their totems. It doesn't matter which totem, just start swinging at them. You know what I mean? It's almost better to swing at those than to swing at their teammates, I promise you. Even if you have one person just doing a lot of damage, and the other person's just killing totems, I swear you'll end up winning the game. It doesn't even matter. It's crazy solid. Resto Druid is actually pretty good. I've been playing a lot with a Resto Druid with my Windwalker Enhanced composition, and I think it's pretty fun. Having Clone on a healer is good. Having Tranquility be like an immune is pretty solid. Bear Form is pretty disgusting. Having Stealth is really good for getting mana back. Yeah, it has a pretty good amount of healing. I think it struggles into certain classes. Like, we seem to struggle into, like, Rogue Mage if the Rogue catches my Druid out of form. It's kind of hard to peel. I would say Resto Druid is above Resto Shaman, though, for sure. I would say it's probably around here. I know this is a weird-looking list right now, but, yeah, I think it's around here. There's a lot of A-tier specs right now. I might have to move some into B. But no, yeah, I think Resto Druid's in A. That makes sense. It's pretty good. It doesn't. I feel like it doesn't run out of mana that much, but maybe that's just because mine goes for drinks a lot, so that's possible. So, but yeah, Resto Druid's pretty solid. I definitely think it's better than Resto Shaman because Shaman relies too heavily on its totems, in my opinion. Rep Paladins do a significant amount of damage. Rep Paladins are great. They have a lot of utility. I do suggest if you're playing against a Rep Paladin to try to train the Rep Paladin most of the time because a Blessing of Sack is really strong. Of course, if you can cleave versus them, that's probably the best situation. The only problem is Rep Paladins, I think, struggle into, like, Warlocks, maybe? I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're good into Warlocks. I don't know. But I feel like versus Affliction Lock, like, I feel like a Rep Paladin would struggle a lot, right? Because you're just going to start rotting, and if the affliction lock's get it running, yeah, stuff like that. So I think anything like that, it's pretty bad into. I do know Ret Warrior is really good still. I think you could probably get away with playing something like Ret Mage, but you wouldn't have an MS effect, so that's kind of a struggle. I think Cupid Cleave is really good, so BM Hunter Ret or Marks Ret. Survival of Cupid is okay. It's probably the worst out of all 3 specs, but it's still decent. So yeah, Ret isn't bad. I would say Ret is probably the capstone of A tier. Actually, I'm going to put it in A+ tier even. I think it's that good. I think it's that good, ladies and gentlemen. It does have a lot of utility still. It has Lay on Hands, which is crazy. It has Blessing of Sack, like I said. It has Blessing of Protection. It has its own bubble, which is really good. It does struggle into a lot of things, though, like Mage and like some casters, in my opinion. Anything that can purge spam is really annoying versus as a Ret. Yeah, they're not bad, though. I think they're pretty good. Shadow Priest is pretty solid. Pretty solid. I don't think it's going anywhere. I do think it is probably the pinnacle of the A+ tier, maybe like that. It's probably the pinnacle of the A+ tier. It's pretty crazy. I play Shadow Priest a lot, and I feel like I do a lot of damage with Shadow Priest. You could do crazy damage with your Void Torrents. It's like a worse Ray of Frost in my opinion, but it's still disgusting considering you have like dots rolling on the target and you have your own crowd control lineups, like you can stun them and you can silence them, which is pretty crazy. You do have your own MS effect through Psyfiend if you wanted to go that route. They have Power Infusion, which is a crazy strong ability that you can give to a teammate, and it gives it to you too, which is pretty gross. Yeah, I think Shadow Priest is pretty good. Has Life Swap, crazy strong. Has Disperse, crazy strong. Has Fade, crazy strong. So, yeah, I think Shadow Priest definitely belongs in the high A's, A+ tier. We have Sub Rogue. I do think Sub Rogue is still God tier. I think it's insane. It does so much single target damage when it needs to. The weird thing is it's single target damage if you use Secret Tech, which you should. Secret Tech is an area of effect, so like if a rogue pre-faints your cheap shot or whatever, and then you go for a Secret Tech, it's going to do significant amount less damage, so you have to watch out for stuff like that. I will say, though, I think Sub Rogue on its own, the utility it provides, the amount of survivability it has with 2 Vanishes, and the Vanishes restore cooldowns, is pretty crazy. So I think Sub Rogue belongs in S tier for sure. We have Survival Hunter, sorry. Survival Hunter, I think, is probably right next to Marks still. I think you can group all the hunters together. It might be maybe like this. Maybe like that. It's hard to say. Yeah, I would swap between these two here, Demonology and Survival. I feel like either or can do good or bad. It's hard to say. I will say that Survival Hunter has really high burst. If you don't dispel Explosive Shot as a healer, you need to start watching for that because it does a lot of damage. So like when the Explosive Shot comes in on your teammate, try to dispel it immediately. It's a magic effect, so you can dispel it. Lasts 2 seconds before it explodes, I believe. So you have like a really tiny window to dispel it, but if you can, it's really good because when they press their burst and they Explosive Shot and then they get a kill shot proc, they can do like 300k in a single global because the kill shot goes off at the same exact time as the Explosive Shot, and boom, your teammate goes from like 60% health to like 0 really quick if they line up their damage right, which is pretty crazy. Mongoose Bite also does pretty good damage. It does like 60 to 80k, which is pretty nice. And it has all the utility that BM would have with Roar Sacrifice, and it also has a disarm, which is new in the PvP talents, which is pretty crazy. So, and it also has an MS effect. So I feel like maybe you could get away with playing something like Survival Demo Lock or Survival AF Lock, some crazy stuff like that you wouldn't be able to play as well as with like Marksmanship Hunter, for instance. I do know Survival Thug Cleave and Survival Jungle Cleave are probably Survival's best comps. I would say Survival Thug Cleave is its best composition, Sub Rogue specifically, for sure. You could also try like Enhanced Survival. That sounds pretty good as well. Having Bloodlust on a Survival sounds absolutely disgusting, and you have a lot of kill potential with that composition. So yeah, Survival's pretty good. Depending on the composition, I'd probably place it above the other two, but in total and average, I would place it under the other two because I think it has less compositions than the other two. I hope that makes sense. I think that's fair. Unholy DK, also a really good spec. There's actually not that many bad specs in the game. Unholy DK does a lot of spread pressure, does a lot of crowd control, just in the sense that it can move people around the map. You can grip people behind pillars, blind them, stun them, absolutely decimate them. It plays ridiculously well with Augmentation Evoker, plays really well with like Demon Hunter, plays well with Warrior, Hunter. It plays well with a lot of classes. It can play well with a Feral Druid, technically. You could probably... Oh, I know Shadow Priest, Unholy DK is good. Affliction Warlock, any Warlock, Unholy DK is really good. So, I think the fact that it has so many compositions in the game makes it a contender for, like, one of the top melee DPS in the game. I would place it right above Enhance, I think. It's pretty good. Pretty solid. Moving on to Windwalker Monk, though. Windwalker is my baby. This thing is disgusting. If you play Windwalker well, you can 100-0 people like butter. It melts everything in sight. I would say this is probably an S tier specialization. Windwalker Monk, I would say it's under Sub Rogue, though, because it can actually semi-die. Windwalker Monk, if you can preemptively know when people are going you can pre-dampen harm. You can pre-Iron Fort Brew, you can pre-Karma, you can pre-Diffuse Magic if you're playing that over Yulons. There's a lot of things you can do. You can pre-teleport even and just line of sight people. It's just disgusting what you can do with Windwalker Monk. It has so much mobility, has 3 rolls, a Flying Serpent Kick. It's got the fact that its Tiger's Palm is a 10-yard range that teleports you to the target is pretty disgusting. Man, it's really good. It has when you press it slow twice in a row, it roots the target, and it's a physical root, so you can't dispel it. This class is crazy. On top of the fact that you can leg sweep and literally 100-0 somebody in that leg sweep like cake, like nothing. If you Serenity, pop Strike of the Windlord, then Foff, then off the Foff you Rising Sun Kick, and then you Foff again, you Blackout Kick, Foff, and the Rising Sun Kick. It's ridiculous, man. You can just chain, you can just go insane on Windwalker Monk. Absolute disgusting class, and I love it. And if you like watching it, watch my channel. Also, remember to follow me on Twitch. I'll stream there some Windwalker Monk gameplay for you, ladies and gentlemen. Augvoker, let's be honest, guys. This spec is filthy, and it is obnoxious to play into. I hate this spec with my life. I would put it there. Actually, I'd put it here, and I'd put this spec here. I think that's how I'd put it. Augvoker, I think, is still the best spec in the game. I don't care what you guys say, what anybody says. It is so annoying to play into. I can't play into the spec. I don't know what it is. Please, if somebody knows the trick, if you're like a multi-rank 1 player and you just dialed in fighting against Augvokers, please hit me up, because I actually have no clue what I'm doing versus this class. It feels like anything I train, it is just immortal for 8 minutes. It also feels like they do a ridiculous amount of damage if I kick the wrong thing. Even if I avoid the Breath of the Eons, it doesn't matter at all. The upheaval still does 200k damage into a 160k fire breath, so I'm still taking 400k damage in like one global practically. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think this spec is outrageous. I don't care that it got a slight nerf. It still got like kind of a buff even with their nerf, which was super unnecessary in my opinion. So yeah, I'm gonna place Augvoker in S tier. I think it is, and hear my logic with Augvoker, right? When you have a specialization that buffs the damage of another specialization, right? And you buff that other specialization, you're buffing the Augvoker without even knowing it, right? So you got to be really like careful with what you do with other classes, which is why like when something like a Windwalker Monk or an Arcane Mage gets buffed ridiculous and it starts doing crazy damage on its own, and then you add an Augvoker which plays really well with that, you're gonna just shred people, right? So you have to be really careful and really cautious now balancing anything, because if you buff any other class, you're actually buffing the Augvoker without even realizing it, which is really hard to balance. So I don't know why they would make a support spec like Augvoker in this game, because every single time it does anything gets buffed at all, you're just technically buffing the Augvoker if it plays with that spec. So yeah, I think Augvoker is super hard to balance. So I think it's going to be S tier no matter what, pretty much, because if something is S tier and it plays with an Augvoker, it's just that much more S tier. The only way that Augvoker would be absolute dumpster tier is if it had the survivability of a Devastation Evoker, while only providing the buffs that it gives. But the fact that it has the survivability of an Augvoker, which is significantly better than a Devastation Evoker, and it has the buffs it provides, it does the damage it does, I think it's just a nasty class overall. And yeah, so this is my tier list, I think. I'm just going to scan through it real quick. I mean, I feel like there should be more B, right? Like, I feel like there shouldn't just be 2 and B, but I feel like this is right. There's a lot of A's this time. There's a lot of A's in this one. What's going on, man? I'm feeling like a teacher handing out A's, bro. Crazy. Crazy. But yeah, I think this is my tier list. This feels pretty dialed. This looks pretty good. It's a little scattered with the healers a little bit throughout the thing, but I feel like this is right. I feel like Holy Pally is the best healer. I definitely feel like this Priest is the worst healer. I feel like Holy Priest is up there with Holy Paladin. Preservation Evoker could probably swap with Holy Priest too. It's pretty good. Yeah, maybe I'll put Preservation at the top of the A+ tier. But outside of that, I mean, I feel like this is it. This is it, guys. Obviously, this is for 3v3 arenas, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and follow my Twitch. Also, feel free to join the Discord in the description below, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.